You're in a calorie deficit, you're tracking your food, you might even be hitting your macros, and you're still not losing fat the way you expected. So what happens? You stay on track for a few days, then by Thursday night, you're standing in the kitchen, eating peanut butter straight out of the jar, wondering what went wrong. Let me tell you something clearly, you don't lack discipline. Your strategy is broken. And I can prove it. Because there's one thing that the leanest, most consistent people do with their nutrition that almost nobody talks about. It's not a supplement, it's not a hack, it's a structural shift in how you build every single meal. And once I explain it, you'll realize it fixes your hunger, your cravings, your energy crashes, and your late night overeating, all of it, at the same time. But first, I need to show you exactly why your current approach is setting you up to fail. Because if you skip that part, the strategy won't stick. Most people treat fat loss like a math equation. Calories in, calories out, done. And technically, yeah, the math matters, but the strategy behind how you eat, what you prioritize, the order you eat it in, the structure of your actual meals, that's what separates people who white-knuckle through a diet for 6 weeks and quit, from people who get lean and stay lean without it feeling like punishment. There's one eating strategy that fixes about 80% of the problems people hit during a fat loss phase. It's not keto, it's not intermittent fasting, it's not starving yourself all week just to binge on the weekend. It's simpler than all of that, and it works better for most people than any of them. In this video, I'm going to break down the single most effective eating strategy for fast, sustainable fat loss. I'll explain why it works on a physiological level, how to actually set it up in your real life, and the mistakes that quietly sabotage people who think they're already doing it right. If you've ever felt like you're doing everything right, but your body isn't responding, this is probably the missing piece. Let's zoom out. When someone says they want to lose fat fast, what they really mean is, I want to lose body fat, keep the muscle I have, and see visible progress within a few weeks. That's a reasonable goal. But the way most people go about it creates 3 problems almost immediately. Problem 1, they slash calories too hard, too fast. They go from 25 calories down to 16 over it overnight. And for a week or two, it works. The scale drops. They feel motivated. But then the body catches up. Energy crashes. Workouts get worse. They start losing muscle. Hunger becomes constant. And eventually, they either binge or just quietly give up. Problem 2, they focus on restriction instead of composition. They think about what they can't eat instead of what they should be eating. So their diet ends up low in protein, low in fiber, low in the stuff that actually keeps them full and functioning, and high in willpower debt. Problem 3, they have no structure. Every meal is a freestyle decision made on the fly, which means every meal is a willpower test. And here's the thing, hungry you is not logical. Hungry you will destroy your plan every single time. Willpower is a terrible fat loss strategy because it runs out. So what actually decides if you succeed? It's not whether you know what to eat. It's this. Can you stay consistent when you're hungry, tired, and busy? Because that's where every diet either holds or collapses. The strategy that fixes all 3 of these problems at once is something I call protein-first eating. Not a diet, not a meal plan, a decision-making framework that makes fat loss almost automatic once you lock it in. Now, before you think, I already eat protein, stay with me because I'm about to show you a specific number that tells you exactly how much protein you actually need. A meal-by-meal breakdown most coaches charge money for, and a mistake in section 5 that I guarantee you're making right now. If you leave before that part, you'll keep spinning your wheels. So let's get into it. Here's the concept in one sentence. At every single meal and snack, protein is the first thing you plan, the first thing on your plate, and the first thing you eat. That's it. That's the strategy. But don't let the simplicity fool you. The downstream effects of this one shift are massive. Let me explain why. When protein leads every eating decision, 3 things happen automatically. First, it kills hunger. Protein is the most satiating macronutrient we have. Gram for gram, it keeps you fuller for longer than carbs or fats. This isn't a theory, it's basic physiology. Protein triggers the release of satiety hormones like peptide YY and GLP-1, while simultaneously suppressing ghrelin, your body's primary hunger hormone, so you naturally eat less at each meal without feeling deprived. Compare that to what most people eat. Small, low-protein, low-volume meals. Their stomach stays physically empty, their hunger hormones spike, their brain thinks they're starving. So now they've got high hunger, low satisfaction, and zero control. They're trying to beat biology with willpower. That's a losing game. Second, it burns more calories during digestion. This is called the thermic effect of food. When you eat protein, your body uses about 20 to 30% of those calories just to break it down and absorb it. Compare that to carbs at 5 to 10% and fats at basically 0 to 3%. So if you eat 200 calories of chicken breast, your body nets roughly 150 usable calories. Eat 200 calories of olive oil and your body nets about 194. Same calories on the label, very different metabolic cost. Third, and this is especially important if you're training, high protein intake protects your muscle tissue during a deficit. When you're eating fewer calories than you burn, your body has to pull energy from somewhere. If protein is high enough, it pulls from fat stores. If it's too low, it starts pulling from muscle. And losing muscle during a cut is the fastest way to end up skinny fat instead of lean. Before we get into the practical setup, let's lock in the target, because eat more protein is vague, and vague advice gets vague results. For fat loss specifically, especially if you're doing any kind of resistance training, aim for around 0.8 to 1 gram of protein per pound of your target body weight per day, not your current weight, your target weight. So, if you weigh 200 pounds and want to get to 180, you're aiming for roughly 144 to 180 grams of protein per day. If that sounds like a lot, that's exactly the point. Most people who say they eat pretty healthy are getting maybe 60 to 80 grams a day. That's not high protein. That's barely maintenance for someone who doesn't exercise. And here's what happens when you actually hit that protein target consistently. A lot of your other macros fall into place on their own. You end up eating less junk by default because protein-rich foods tend to push out the hyperpalatable, calorie-dense stuff that was inflating your intake in the first place. The cookies and chips and random snacking don't disappear because you have more willpower. They disappear because you're not as hungry anymore. Alright, so that's the protein side. But protein alone isn't the full strategy. There's a second piece that most people completely ignore, and it's the reason some people can eat in a deficit and feel fine, while others are white-knuckling it every single day. I'll explain that right now. And then after that, I'm going to walk you through the exact meal-by-meal framework: breakfast, lunch, dinner, snacks. So you can start using this tomorrow. Don't skip ahead though, because the order matters. The volume principle. Why what you eat matters as much as how much. Now here's the second half of the strategy, and this is the part most people completely ignore. Your brain doesn't just track calories, it tracks physical volume, how much space food takes up in your stomach. That's why 500 calories of snacks leaves you hungry, but 500 calories of real food can keep you full for hours. Same calorie number on paper, completely different experience in your body. Think about it. A handful of cookies and a coffee, gone in 5 minutes and you're hungry again in an hour. But a plate of grilled chicken, roasted potatoes, and a bowl of fruit, that stays with you. Same calories, wildly different satiety. This is because your stomach has stretch receptors. When it physically expands, it sends fullness signals to your brain. Foods that are high in volume relative to their calorie content, like potatoes, vegetables, fruit, oats, Greek yogurt, trigger those signals hard. Foods that are calorie-dense but low volume, like nuts, oils, granola, dried fruit, barely register. So after you've anchored every meal with protein, the next priority is filling the rest of your plate with high-volume, nutrient-dense foods: potatoes, rice, fruit, vegetables, oats, yogurt. These are the foods that make a deficit feel like you're actually eating. Fat loss becomes dramatically easier when your meals actually feel like meals. Here's a detail most people miss entirely. It's not just about what you eat, it's about the order you eat it in. Research has shown that when you eat protein and vegetables before starches and sugars in a meal, your blood sugar response is significantly flatter. Less blood sugar spiking means less insulin spiking. Less insulin spiking means less energy crashing an hour later. And fewer energy crashes mean fewer cravings, less brain fog, and way fewer moments where you find yourself standing in front of the fridge at 3 p.m. with no plan and no willpower. Think about it like building a fire. Protein and fiber are the logs, slow-burning, long-lasting fuel. Simple carbs are the kindling. They flare up fast and burn out fast. If you throw kindling on first with no logs, you get a quick flame and then nothing. But if you lay the logs down first, everything burns more evenly and lasts longer. So at every meal, eat your protein first, then your vegetables, then your carbs. It sounds almost too simple, but the difference in how you feel and how much you end up eating is noticeable within the first few days. Okay, now let me give you the part you can actually screenshot and use starting tomorrow. This is the meal by meal breakdown. Breakfast, lunch, dinner, and snacks. What to prioritize, what to swap, and the exact protein targets for each one. This is the section that turns the concept into a system. Now let's make this real. Here's how protein first eating works in practice. Meal by meal. Step 1. Before you eat anything, ask one question. Where is the protein in this meal? Not after, not as a side thought. First. If you can't answer that question clearly, the meal isn't ready yet. This is the filter that changes everything. Breakfast. This is where most people fail tasks. Cereal, toast, oatmeal, a banana, a granola bar. These are all basically carbs with a protein cameo. A pastry and a coffee isn't a meal, it's a warm-up. A protein-first breakfast means starting with eggs, Greek yogurt, cottage cheese, a protein shake, or turkey sausage, something that puts you at 25 to 40 grams of protein before you even think about what goes with it. Instead of cereal, add protein-rich yogurt. Instead of plain toast, add eggs, then build from there. Lunch, same filter. Don't start with, I'll have a salad, and then figure out protein later. Start with, I need 40 grams of protein, and build the meal around that. Grilled chicken, tuna, salmon, ground turkey, tofu if you're plant-based, then the vegetables, the grain, the dressing become supporting players, not the headliner. Dinner. This is usually where people do best, because most dinner traditions already center around a protein source.